saying welcome to everybody, both of all of you in-house and for those who are online. At this time, and by the way, we also have our fifth member. He's on the phone here with us, so we have the full board here. At this time, I'll call a meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, February the 10th, 2026, and the time is 6:05 p.m. At this time, we're going to ask Ms. Green to come up, and I'm going to ask everybody to stand, and she's going to lead us in a pledge of allegiance, after which we have a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
We're going to pause a moment for a moment of silence, and thank you. You may be seated. And thank you, Ms. Green.
Mr. Bacon, if you would come down for just a second. Ms. Green, I want to thank you for always serving our school district. You come over, this is not your first time doing the pledge, so we definitely thank you for your service. And so I want to present you with this certificate. There you go. And please take a picture with our awesome interim superintendent, Mr. Tyrone Bacon. All right, thank you.
Again, Ms. Green. Okay, at this time, I entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda for tonight.
I move that motion.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been properly made by Ms. Blackshear and second by Ms. King for the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your hand. And Mr. Butler? Okay, I don't know if he's on, but anyway, we'll say 4. Motion passes. Okay. Ms. Blackshear, would you get an ethics statement?
Yes, sir. Thank you. In accordance with regulations set forth by the Georgia Ethics Commission, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflict of interest or interest of such conflict. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest? Seeing none, Mr. Chair, we will proceed with our agenda.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blackshear. At this time, did any of the board members, do you have any comments or remarks? If not, Mr. Bacon?
Board Chair Christophin, Vice Chair Rouse, good evening, board members, constituents, and people here in the audience. First announcement is that we have an extended President's Day vacation break. School will be closed Friday and Monday with an asynchronous day on Tuesday. Students returning to class, on Tuesday, with students returning to class on Wednesday. So what we have here, I'm going to do this in an announcement form. This is the financial briefing that I gave to all the staff members here at the school system. So I will do this as a public address if the board's permission. But first of all, I'd like to remind everybody that we are a school district with a mission to inspire, challenge, and prepare all of our students to compete globally, with a vision of generating excellence, one team, one goal. Why are we doing this presentation? What's the purpose? Explain why this information is being shared now. Acknowledge that staff and families have been feeling the impact for some time, and establish transparency as a leadership priority. Transparency is necessary to build trust and explain these difficult decisions that we're all about to make in the district. Twiggs County is not new to financial hardships. There's little room in our district and in our county for financial mistakes. Historically, we've had limited financial resources. We have a small tax base and limited margins for error. Discipline and long-term planning are essential if we plan on being successful. The current condition didn't develop over time. The current situation developed over time and not in 1 year. A pattern of decisions over multiple years jeopardize our long-term stability. Long-term stability and projects were not prioritized. Spending favored visibility over sustainability. Our salary growth outpaced our revenue. Maintenance was deferred, and there was gaps in transparency. Salary decisions created permanent structural situations. It was unsustainable. Our payroll in the district is our largest expense, 88 to 90%. Salary increases implemented across multiple years were the problem. Some positions increased up to 40% in a 3-year period. Raises were not tied to reoccurring revenue, and costs compounded year over year. Deferred maintenance always costs more later. So these increased our costs, affecting our facilities, the way we do our routine maintenance. Preventive maintenance was replaced by emergency repairs, and deferred work increased long-term costs for all of us. Short-term programs and spending. Funds were directed to short-lived programs. Software created an ongoing subscription cost. Initiatives that lacked sustainability planning, and core operations were weakened by these decisions. Transparency and oversight. Where was our board in this situation? The board lacked clear, timely financial information from those in charge. Budget variances were not fully visible. Cash flow stress not clearly communicated. Oversight tools were limited. At some point, the board were going to seek legal intervention to get the information that it needed to make the decisions that the district needed. Restoration and outlining our path to stability and recovery. The current administration did not create the financial condition, but we will be key in making it better. Recurring costs incurred without long-term funding and planning will cease, and we will prioritize our maintenance and capital programs over the next several months. This is a leadership reset. Reset our priorities, reset our discipline, and make sure that we recognize immediately what the district needs and prioritize our students over adults. We'll make commitments over comfort. We created the 4-pronged plan. Prong 1, navigate the current year. Prong 2, prepare for the upcoming year. Prong 3, strengthen our financial footing. And prong 4, assess our financial stress. This is all necessary to build a cohesive and financial future for the district. As part of my job, the board had directed me to get the information that they needed. So we hired a independent certified public accountant. The conclusions were based on our verified facts. External consultants were engaged, and all of this is data-driven. The board had the information first, so the scope of the problem has been confirmed. Year in and year out, we've had a $1.1 million We've been $1.1 million over budget. This condition exists from some time. Payments were late for things such as insurance, TRS, taxes, and regular vendor payments. Although all of our critical bills are being paid and up to date, and emergency cash controls have been implemented, we realize that stabilization alone is insufficient. We must make changes. One thing that we will do is not balance the budget off of our classrooms or our classified folks. So most of those reductions will happen here at the central office. Retirements will be prioritized over layoffs. We will reorganize for efficiency, and administrative overhead will be reduced significantly to meet budget goals. Protect the classroom and the staff first. Instruction is our priority. Instruction is what we will do first. The classroom and the students will be protected. Students will not pay for adult decisions. Classified staff will not balance the budget. Central office will absorb a majority of the reductions. Cost controls and sacrifices. Non-essential purchases are suspended. We have a weekly meeting that we meet and we go through each and every purchase before the checks are ever written. Overtime will be significantly reduced. Professional learning and field trips restricted to those things that are co-curricular. Of course, athletics. And professional learning restricted to only those things that are state mandated. Multiple year deterioration over time. This will take a long time to recover. It's not a quick fix. Financial deterioration occurred over multiple years. July 1 represents a structural reset with our structural budget changes and staffing. Recovery will take several years. By accounting estimates, to get back where we have a fund balance and our cash flow without taking out a TAN will take 3 years of discipline reset. Transparency and discipline will define the road ahead. Progress monitoring of our new budget will begin July 1. We'll have stronger financial reporting to all of our stakeholders and board members, regular updates to our staff and community, full transparency. The district can recover. There's a plan in place, and difficult decisions to protect our students will take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon. Are there any questions about the consent agenda? We have the minutes from the 3 meetings we've had as well as the district requests. If not, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that motion.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been properly made by Ms. Blackshear and seconded by Ms. King to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion again? Okay, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Okay, the motion passes. At this time, we're going to move into our business agenda, and I believe we have someone here to share with us facility planning. You want to introduce? Okay. Yeah.
Sonia Spollinger with SRJ Architects,
Okay.
and I've got some things to go over with y'all today to give you some information and some things that might help you moving forward in the long run. So we're going to talk a little bit about modernization, modification, renovation, all the funding that comes from DOE, and the different ways that you can get your buildings up to standards of what we have today, and some of the options that you have available to you. So the first thing that I want to talk about is modification funding. Modification covers HVAC, roof, kitchen equipment. If you have some instructional units you need to modify, so say you have 6 science labs that are too small, but you needed 4 to turn that into 4 that were the correct size for today, that would fall under that category. If you need additional drop-off canopies for bus or car pickup, or if you had an elevator that needed to be replaced, I don't think y'all have that, but modification funding, if you see to the left, I don't know how well y'all can see that, but for roof, you get funding from DOE every 20 years for your roofs. For HVAC, you get funding every 10 years. Kitchen equipment, there's certain pieces of kitchen equipment, the cooler freezer, the serving lines, the dishwasher, and the hood, the kitchen hood. Those are the things that are connected to your building. They're not just like a plug and play kind of thing. Those you can get replaced every 15 years, or you get funding toward the replacement every 15 years. The physical changes is every 20 years, and then the canopies are every 20 years. So that's what we call modification funding. And then the next category is renovation funding. So that's the things like floor covering, painting, relighting. Those are all listed. I won't talk about all of those, but the modification funding that we just talked about, when you get funding for those, they have to go for those specific items. If you get HVAC money, it has to go toward HVAC. The renovation funding is a little bit different. We put in your needs in all of those categories, and if you get the funding for those, if you don't get enough to do it all, you can use that funding toward whichever ones you can afford to do. So it gives you a little flexibility in that. And to make sense, we say you needed all of those things on the list and you get the funding, but when we look at the numbers, it only is enough to cover doing new floors. Then you can use all of the money that they give you toward the new floors. It just means that you're not going to get any more renovation money for that period of time, which renovation money is every 20 years. So we want to be really careful with how we're using that money, since you're not going to get it again for another 20 years. So, but it does give us that flexibility to put it where the need is greatest. And then the next category is called modernization funding. Modernization is for when a school reaches 40 years old, and then they give you $60 a square foot, and that might be changing. A lot of these numbers that I give you are changing, or trying to be changed with DOE because the cost have gone up so much, but currently it's $60 a square foot toward the modernization of that. And once you get modernization funding, DOE will consider your school a new school. So it'll click day one, start over with all of the funding moving forward from that. So ideally, they would like for you to, when you're finished with modernization funding, for your school to be just like a new school, to have everything brought up to code, all of your insulation brought up to code, your mechanical units are all brand new, you know, the windows are changed out with insulated glass, all those kind of things, so that it's just like a brand new school when you're finished. That's not always the case. We can't always quite get to that point. But going into that, you would need to understand that once you've gotten that money, then your school would be considered a new school for funding moving forward. So you wouldn't get any renovation money or any of that. Your clock would start at zero for all of that. So just looking at the schools that you have right now, starting with Jeffersonville Elementary School, one of the options that you have is we could do modernizations, renovations, and modifications of that school. This is just your floor plan. The way that DOE looks at these is they give a building number for a school depending on the year that it was built. And so you've got actually two separate buildings here. You've got the main building, which was built in 1988, so it's 38 years old currently. And then the gym, which we helped you to do in 2017, is now 9 years old. So you have a total of 33 instructional units. Try to keep that number in your head moving forward, but you have 33 there. So as you see that, those fonts are not showing up correctly, so it's a little bit hard to read up there. For some reason, it changed the fonts. Sorry about that. But I'll try to go through this and see if I can call it out for you. The items that are highlighted there are what I've included in the cost estimates in COPS right now, which COPS is your facility plan program on DOE. So those things are in the numbers that I have for the estimates on the left-hand side, which are looking a little jumbled now. But that portion of school will become eligible for modernization during this 5-year period that we are doing your facility plan. So it would be eligible for the modernization funding because it will be 40 years old. So I've included that. So total modernization cost for the main building would be around $9.3 million. The renovations for that would be 2.1, and the modifications for both of the buildings, because you do qualify for a small amount of modifications, about 600,000, or you qualify for some in 2027. You'll qualify for some for the gym. The total cost, when we add fees and costs and stuff to that, to bring that up just to like a new school would be just over $19 million. The DOE funding right now, as of today, for that would be about 1.376. Now that does not include the modernization for 2010, which would be an additional $60 a square foot, because that's not eligible till 2028, but it is during this 5-year period, so keep that in mind. And then it does not include any of the modifications for building 2020 yet, because it doesn't qualify for those until 2027. But as we stand right today, DOE would give you $1,376,000 toward that. So if we did that today, it would be a local cost of $17,690,000. We move on to the middle high school. And I say these are options 1, 2, the numbers don't really mean anything. It's just different things we're talking about, really. So that building, we've got 2 buildings according to DOE. We've got the building 5010, which was built in 1991. So it's currently 34 years old. So it's getting closer to that modernization, but not quite. And then the building 5020 in the back was built in 1999. So it's 26 years old. So right now you have a total of 51 instructional units at that school. So similar to the way we talked about that, you're not eligible for modernization yet. And one of the things that's kind of hurting you is because that school is so big, it is currently 51 instructional units. But with the number of students you have in that school, you only earn 24 instructional units from DOE. That's the number that they say the number of students you have would be the adequate number of classrooms. So they only give you, for things like roof, they'll give you the full square footage, but things like the renovations inside, like the floor covering, those kind of things, they only give you the amount based on 24 instructional units, because that's what they say you need. So the numbers, you don't even earn any renovation money for building 5020 because you're over the 24 instructional units with the other building. So but in total, to modernize and renovate and modify that entire building with fees and contingency would be about just over $33 million. And today, before that building gets to 40 years old, the state would give you $1.7 million. So the local cost would be $31,775,000. But that would go up some once you earn that modernization. So I know it sounds crazy to think about a new school, but I want you to look at the numbers on this. I've got a couple of different scenarios here. Because you're considered low wealth, And because of that, DOE gives you a lot of money for a new school. And so I just want you to be aware of the way they calculate their funding and the way and what you would earn. So as you're planning going forward, you understand how this works. So if we were to do a new pre-K through 12, now the state is funding pre-K, so that helps us a little bit. And we only did it with 43 instructional units, which is what DOE says you earn. And that's what they say you need for the number of students that you have. And I want you to combine with the two schools, you currently have 84 instructional units. So that's quite a bit smaller than what you have with the two schools combined. So if we go to the numbers next for that, before we get into that with all of the scenarios for a new school, I want to make sure you understand about what you would be required to do that. You would have to phase out, that's what DOE calls it, the existing schools. And this is the example of the language that you would have to include in a board resolution. And part of that is that they want you to have a plan moving forward for the existing buildings and what you would do with the existing buildings. You can't just move out and leave them. You've got to either demo those or have a plan of something you're going to move into those, a purpose for them. You need to tell them that. We would need, if you're going to demo, when we run all numbers in the future, we would need to include the demolition cost into your planning, if that's the plan. If you're going to use the old buildings for athletics, then we would need to put that into your plan. You may not find another use for those, like a board office or something like that. A lot of times that's what people use it for. But if you leave those buildings open, empty, those could have other ramifications where other people could have uses for those buildings and kind of go after wanting to use your facilities for that. So it's always good to have a plan, but you would have to do this board resolution for that. And then DOE does project that you're going to have a little bit of project decrease in your numbers. So they're projecting right now that your numbers would be around 709 by 2030. So that's within that current FTE. Right now you're at 713. I mean, within the current 5-year facility plan that we're working on. So going down, I've been told, I think that you have some potential industry coming in that could change that possibly. So we need to keep an eye on that, and we see it going up. We might want to make an amendment to your plan at some point so that you can draw your money based on your actual FTE that, it's projected. If you're seeing an increase, then we need to account for that. One of the good things is that you currently own the land that's across the street from the school. And so you have that land that's already there. So that's the potential for a new site. And the great thing that I see, just in the planning purpose of that, is that that site should qualify for a site selection because you already have the schools there. Right off the bat, don't see any dangers or anything around it. We would have to go through a site assessment process with DOE for that. Looks like maybe even the potential of closing the road that kind of cuts your property in half right now, because you're really the only tenant on that road. And then that would allow you to still use your existing athletic facilities that you have. You wouldn't have to rebuild all of those if you were to build a new school. I think another good thing with that is you have the fairly new gym at the elementary school, so you could work that into what you're doing where you're saving that and using it for a purpose. Or if you wanted to use, say, the elementary school for a board office or something like that, it would still give you plenty of room on the rest of the site to do the new school. So those are just some things to think about, and where you could think about whether you're going to you would demolish a portion of the existing school, repurpose any of those for a field house or anything like that. Just things to think about. But if you were to put this to DOE, you would have to give them a plan of what you plan to do with all of those. So we won't walk through every bit of this because it would get tedious, but this is the spaces that I've included to come up with the square footage for that minimum 43 instructional units. And that's what, again, DOE says for the 709 projected FTE. So the square footage, I've done a complete plan of how our percentages for circulation and stuff usually work out, and I come up to about 98,960 square feet. We go to the next page. This is showing you how that breaks down. The way DOE calculates their money that they would give you is they take the number of instructional units that you earn, and based on the highest level of grade level that's in the building, so with this would be a pre-K 12, they give you more per square foot. They do the whole school based on the high school square footage, which is 2850. If you were just doing a K-5, that number would be smaller, but they give you based on the highest grade. So 2850, and then they multiply it by 1.1. That's a factor to cover fees and other costs that you might have, and a contingency fund to set aside so that whatever happens, you would have some money for that. And then they multiply that times whatever RS means, which that's a book that architects and contractors use for cost estimating. And whatever the current year's RS means says the cost to build a school in your area, which they would probably base it on Macon that's the closest one that you are to. And they would multiply it by that. So currently that's $331 a square foot that number's based on. That's going to change every year depending on what the cost is estimated for construction. So that comes up to a cost that they're estimating of $44 million, $44,679,000. Then they subtract 5 years of your SPLOST from that number. So the number I had for your SPLOST was $852,272 per year. We multiply that times 5 and we subtract it from that cost. And then if you have received any funding from DOE, they would subtract the life of that funding left from the amount that they're giving you. So right now, the only chargeback you have is some for the elementary gym, and that's $152,000. And every year that we move away from the year that was built, that number's going to go down because the life of that funding they gave you is diminishing as we move away from that. So that number will go down. As it stands today, you would get about $40 million from DOE towards your new school. So that's pretty awesome that they would give you that much toward the new school. That minimum 43 instructional units, just what they said, my estimate, we're seeing schools come in about $350 a square foot right now. And so when we add that, we add some soft costs, which are things like fees and furniture and property. We have to do any turning lanes or anything with the property, geotechnical testing, surveying, all those extra costs that tend to pop up. I've got an estimate of $1.5 million for that size school for that. And so I'm projecting the cost of the school would be about $39,945,000. So you're actually getting more state funding than what we think the school would cost. Now, I have to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure that they would not let you take that full $40 million if you're only spending the 39. So I think they require you to give that 5 years of SPLOST, but that's something I need to confirm because I usually don't have people want to build it smaller than what their funding would allow. So the next option, if we go on to the next one, is kind of balancing that with what your 5-year SPLOST is that DOE would require you to put into it with the cost and trying to get those to balance out to maximize what you're getting. And that puts us at 47 instructional units. And again, you currently have 84, so it's still quite a bit smaller. So if we move on to that, that's about 119,604 square feet to do that. That would add some music, PE, ROTC, and multipurpose ag lab that we didn't have in the other one. And then all of the spaces like kitchen, cafeteria, media center, those are bigger based on a bigger school. So as the number of instructional units grows, those have to grow to accommodate more students. Now, sometimes we will go ahead and build those for like 1,000 FTE, so that if you can afford to do that, so that if you wanted to add on classrooms in the future, your core is already big enough to support that. And that's something that DOE would want to see in the future if you wanted to add on. So with that scenario, you would come out with the same 40 million because the state only calculates what they're giving you based on the number of instructional units you earn, so they would give you the same 40. But then the cost would be about 44 million. And so The state would give you 40, and then your 5 years of SPOS collection would be the match to that. And so that would be the total cost. So that's 47 learning units. And then as we talked through this, this option is more realistic for teaching the way that you teach now, and kind of a number that, talking with your administration and everything, that we felt like could work comfortably for moving forward. And it's 55 instructional units. This one would be a little bit, it would have more classrooms, it would add a K-5 art, add a high school art, and go ahead and bump those core spaces up to 1,000 for 1,000 students. And that option is 132,000 square feet. So if we move to the funding of that, DOE calculates exactly the same way. They give you the same 40 million because they're basing on the 43 instructional units. But the cost would be more, about 53 million. The soft cost would probably, bump those up to 2 million, just because a bigger school, you're going to have a little bit more of that. And then that would make your local option, the local portion, about 13 million. So that's, more than 5 years. At that point, you probably would need to do some bonds to be able to get past that 5-year mark for your local portion. But it's not out of the question from what we see other systems do, to do that 13 million local. But that would give you a 55 learning unit school. And then I just added a few. We've done a lot of K-12s across the state. When we do those, I know people are like, kindergarten, and we're talking pre-K now since they've started funding that, but kindergarten and high schoolers together in the same building, how does that work? It works fairly well, because when we design that, we design them for separation. So these are some examples. We just did a Pulaski's, our most recent one. That is a 1,247 FTE, 85 instructional units. I put a picture of the gym. There were some questions about the gyms and how big they were. So just so you can kind of get an idea of how many seats in each of those, that Pulaski gym is 1,100 seats. They calculate those at 18 inches per person, just so you know. Most of us aren't that skinny, but that's what it's considered. Calhoun County is more in line with the size that you would be looking at. That's 39 instructional units. So that's about like that first option that we were looking at. 577 FTE, and that's a K-12, and that's their gym. I think it's 986 is what that should say in their gym seating. And then another one that we did was Wilcox County, and that one's a little bit smaller than the Pulaski, similar setup really in floor plan, and that's 1,049 FTE and 80 instructional units. And then Stewart County was a little bit different. They had a fairly new elementary school, and so we added the high school onto their elementary school to make it a K-12. So we built a new high school gym, new CTAE wing, added a science lab, and a new admin for the high school, and so they're all on the same campus. So one thing I want to mention, why a lot of our clients have decided to do this, and that's something for your consideration, is that this has cut a lot of costs for them. When they have, like you have, these two huge schools that, as we see, are much bigger than what you actually need for the number of students that you have. And Mr. Bacon, I'm sure, can tell you that it costs a lot to maintain in those schools, and it costs a lot to heat and cool those over the years, and you don't need all that square footage. So you're doing a lot of square footage that you're maintaining, heating and cooling. And then as we looked at the numbers before with what DOE gives you toward that maintenance and stuff, it still leaves a lot in your pocket that you have to come up with to keep that going. If you did this new school, it would cut your square footage that you're doing tremendously, almost in half, and get it down to what you actually need. One kitchen staff, so you're not having 2 kitchen staffs. There's just a lot of economy of scale by doing this. And also how much money DOE gives you because you qualify for low wealth toward this. So It's a lot to think about. There's a lot of options there. I just hope that I've given you the information that you need to make decisions moving forward either way. Can I answer any questions for anyone?
Thank you so much. Board, I just want you to be aware that every 5 years, we have to do a facility plan. And we have to let the state know within these 5 years what it is that we want to do. So we can't, just come up with something at the last minute. So this is several choices that we have. We can choose one or none based on that. And then you can do it in another 5 years. But it's very important that we look at this at the age of our buildings and the continuing cost of maintaining them. But as always, these are our architects. They've done our gym and also our HVAC since I've been here, and we appreciate them. And they work with us to make sure our COPS and other platforms are up to date with estimates. So we have to stay in compliant with those, and they do that for us for nothing as our architects, and we call on them quite often, and they never charge us, rarely charge us. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have for information for the board tonight, a tax anticipated note, or TAN. Once again, we're a school system with a vision, generating excellence, one team, one goal, with the mission to inspire, challenge, and prepare all of our students to compete globally. This specific presentation deals with strategic goals 1 through 5, learning and wellness for all, excellence ahead, academics, facility, and opportunities, doing things the Twigs way, growing and sustaining our village, and becoming a premier people-first organization. On last week, Ms. King and Mr. Christoffen were with me when we just got with the Bank of Dudley to look at our options for a TAN. We are requesting a TAN of $1.5 million, and that is to get immediate cash flow stabilization to meet those gaps before our taxes are flowing back into the school system's coffers. So we are preparing this for the end of February is when we'd like to have the final paperwork from the bank. Why is this TAN necessary? The district is experiencing severe cash flow shortages. Payroll, benefits, and vendor obligations must remain uninterrupted. Prior year budgeting and spending decisions have left limited liquidity. A TAN provides a responsible short-term bridge while corrections are being implemented. As we talked about earlier in the briefing, those would be our financial cuts that we would see July 1. How the TAN will protect the district operations, maintain continuity of instruction and student services, ensure employees are paid on time, prevent further disruption in vendor and benefit payments, and support essential facility and operational needs during this recovery period. Board oversight in our next steps. We'll be partnering with the bank. We partner with the Bank of Dudley underwriting team. Full documentation and repayment plan will be presented for the board before approval. And of course, board approval will be needed before we move forward once we have the paperwork and the terms. And I will provide ongoing updates and financial monitoring during this process. Our goal is to stabilize today while the long-term budget issue is going on, and we will use that financial discipline with our TAN to make sure that we have that recovery that we so need. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions? And can I get a motion to approve the,
It's just for information, Chairman Garsoffen.
okay. It's got action on here.
I'm sorry, it's just for information.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
We thought we would have the details and everything to
Gotcha.
Yes, sir. Our next presentation would be an update to our four-pronged plan, stabilization plan. That's our theme is recurring. Once again, our strategic goals are all 5, and we named those earlier. The status update as of February 4th, 2026. Now, the purpose is to provide the board with a clear progress update on the financial recovery and operation stabilization plan. Prong 1, managing the school year. CPI presented an independent financial snapshot to the board on January 29th. Our TAN feasibility review is in progress with the Bank of Dudley. Certified staff contracts are underway under legal review, so board members were a part of that as well as we updated our staff contracts. At-risk staff support and accountability process was launched. Prong 2, preparing for the next school year. We had our Infinite Campus rollover. Scheduling meetings are underway. We also are reviewing our reduction in force policy with our lawyers and key staff members here at the school. Administrator salary scale is being evaluated for affordability. Prong 3, strengthening our long-term finances. We'll review of staffing costs now and into future years, mapping long-term contract obligations. Cash flow planning for stability is going on. So that was part of the work that the CPA did for us on last week. Beginning a multi-year budgeting planning framework. So hopefully we'll have a framework together for everyone in the next couple weeks so that that framework will be what we follow from now on. Prong 4, financial recovery, 60-day plan. The CPA findings are incorporated into a full recovery assessment. So we got a snapshot. That snapshot was just to get us going and know where we were. We need to know how we got there, and we need to understand what it is we need to do to move forward. Legal and staffing stability reviews are underway. It's causing us an expense, but we have to look at all options that are on the table, whether that's reduction in force, how our contracts read, and we've been doing that work. So we're looking at all of those options as well as our policies that pertain to finances and financial accountability from district and district staff members. TAN stress testing to understand the future impact. So we're looking at taking our TAN out this fairly early for us, and what will it take to get us back on a regular TAN schedule, and then what will it take for us to not need a TAN? And once again, I'll have a formal written report to the board within 60 days of this report. So, as a summary, as of July 29th, the district has moved from early fact-finding to real measurable action. The board has now received an independent CPA review of cash position, upcoming bills, payroll needs, and short-term risks. At the same time, contract reviews and at-risk employee process are underway to reduce staffing and legal exposure. Planning for next year is active through scheduling, staffing policy review, and salary scale evaluations. Together, these steps show a shift from reacting to problems toward managing them in an organized, transparent, and financially responsible way. The next steps will consolidate this work into a clear recommendations and written stabilization report within the 60-day time framework. So, as the four-pronged plan stated, when I presented it to you and you passed it, we're on schedule with that. It's where we need to be. You have the information to make the decisions. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Bacon. Mr. Reader?
Good evening, Board Chair Karstafen, Vice Chair Rouse, Superintendent Mr. Bacon, and our constituents in person and online, and our board members. Tonight, I'm giving you a federal programs update. This is a very high view of the some of the federal programs, the major federal programs, let me put it that way. It aligns with our vision, generating excellence, one team, one goal, and our mission to inspire, challenge, and prepare all students to compete globally. It aligns with our strategic goals, learning and wellness for all, and excellence ahead, academics, facilities, and opportunities. What you have before you are our grant budgets, our major grant budgets, and we have federal grant budgets. Let me rephrase that. Title I, we're looking at is a total of $532,510. And at this point, you see what we have expended and what we have left to spend. We have expended at this point 71.5% of the total budget. We have a total of 15 months to spend the budget for Title I, so we are right on track to where we need to be. It is important that we get to 85% of this budget. Our carryover from last year is expected after the state board meeting, which is, I think in a week, it's early in February. So that's when we'll get our carryover in Title I, any money. But remember, we have to spend a minimum of 85% of the $532,510 within that 15-month cycle. Our Title II money, what you see here is a total of $66,939. At this point, we have expended 70.5% of this. Again, our carryover from last year is expected to be put into place after the February state board meeting. This one, we don't have a whole lot left from last year to be put back into here for carryover, but that's a good thing because the point is if they give it, they want us to spend it. The next thing is Title V. Our Title V is a combination of Title IV and V into one pot. That's just a reminder of what that is. What you're looking at here is a total of $73,108, but we have already received our carryover from last year in this budget, which was around $14,000. It's just a little over $14,000. So that gives us the what we did have was $59,108. Now we have $73,108. So we have expended 61% of this budget. Again, we can carry over the Title II and the Title V. There's not a limit as to how much we can carry over. But Title I, we can only carry over the 15%, so you lose it if you don't spend the 85%, and there's a penalty associated with that. Then we're looking at the school-based health clinic. The school-based health clinic is what we use the vast majority of this money. That's the $535,887 that you see at the bottom. That was to build it. And then part of that has gone into the next phase of the school-based health clinic. The school-based health clinic, the remaining money, the majority of the remaining money that you see at the top is for payroll, and that is all that we can use it for. So there is some money in this $200,000 that's at the top that was left over from the building project, but they froze that when the building project was finished, and we cannot spend any more of that on the building project side. It's going towards salaries for the school-based health clinic staff and their administrative staff. And there is $174,549 left of that to pay, and we need to spend it by the end of September. So this money needs to be spent by the end of September, and I'm sure that they will. They're the ones that tell us it's their payroll. We're just the holder of the money. So the money comes to us, we pay it out, the state reimburses us. So we just hold the money, we don't spend it, they spend it. Then what you see on here is the COPS grant, and this is just a reminder of where we are. Above the line, you see that there's $375,000, and then below the line is $125,000, and that's because we have to match with $125,000 of the $375,000. And what we are looking at doing in order to assist with our cash flow is if a when a purchase is made, rather than wait till the end to pay all of the $125,000 at once, we're taking the percentage of this each time, about 20% each time, and putting our part with their part all at the same time. So we end the grant with $125,000 of our money spent, and it doesn't come out all at once. And that's to assist cash flow between now and the time that this grant is expended. We talked in executive session about what we are doing and the first purchase that we are making. We're still in the process of making the first purchase. In talking with another district, remember only 2 other districts in the state have received this money, and we've talked with them about what the timeline was to be reimbursed, because that was a question that the board had in our executive session, and they received the money when they requested it, say it was today, tomorrow morning, it was in their bank account. So it was, and that was during the government shutdown. So we know that there is a really quick turnaround to receive the money back. So cash flow purposes, the purchases themselves won't interrupt our cash flow for more than a day or two, but we do have to have the $125,000 that we put in there. As we are looking at this point in the year, remember the clip that I give you at the beginning of the school year, that really, really long document. We're in the process of putting together the things for our clip. That is what our needs are in the district. How are we going to spend this money? And we are looking at carefully at what is being spent. We are looking to restructure the way some of this is being spent to relieve as many services in the district as we can as we move forward with this money. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
I just want to say, I know you said that you got a team and just gonna do the spending. Can you just let us know, give us a printout of what you're spending it on, what it's being spent on?
Yes, ma'am, I can do that. Even with this money here, I can do that more specifically. This was just that as a, high up overhead. I haven't spoken to you for a while about where we are with this. I wanted you to get a good idea of where we are in the spending process with federal dollars and how we're working with that, working with cash flow and everything else within the district. So any expenses going forward, they're already budgeted. I cannot go outside of that budget without an amendment to that budget, and even still, I have to stay within the clip that you've already received. But yes, ma'am, anything going forward, I can make you aware in a presentation. After we spend a little bit, I'll do it, not every single one.
Okay.
Unless you want every single one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Reader.
You're welcome.
Well, that concludes our business agenda. We want to thank each one of you for your presentations. At this time, can I get a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been properly made by Ms. King and second by Ms. Blackshear to move into executive session. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to return from executive session?
So moved.
Second. Okay, the motion to return from executive session has been properly made by Ms. Blackshear and second by Mr. Rouse. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, the motion passes. We have several recommendations from the superintendent. The first is resignation 3439. Can I get a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation for resignation 3439?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion has been properly made by Mr. Rouse and second by Ms. Blackshear to accept the superintendent's recommendation for resignation 3439. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, next, can I get a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation for the renewal of the elementary certified staff?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion to accept the renewal of the elementary certified staff has been properly made by Ms. Blackshear and second by Mr. Rouse. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, finally, we have the superintendent's recommendation for the renewal of the middle high school certified staff. And non-renewals. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Well, let me just back up. Let me back up. Can I get a motion on the renewals of the middle high school certified staff?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's the motion been properly made by Ms. King and second by Ms. Blackshear on the renewal of the middle high school certified staff recommendations. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, now, can I get a motion on the superintendent's recommendations for the non-renewals in the middle high school staff, certified staff?
So moved.
Okay, a motion has been made by Ms. Blackshear. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been properly made by Ms. Blackshear and second by Ms. King to accept the superintendent's recommendation on the non-renewals. Is there, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, and noes? Okay. Okay, so the motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation passes 3-2. 3-4, 3-2 against. Is there any other business? Okay, since there's no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Okay, the motion to adjourn has been properly made by Ms. Blackshear and second by Mr. Rouse. All in favor, raise your hand. This meeting is adjourned.